Another day and another mid-range smartphone review, and this time it's the Pixel 9a which has finally got its release. So we've been using this for roughly a week or so and we have some thoughts, but let's talk about the area in which this is placed, the mid-range. So you have the Poco X7 Pro, Samsung A56, Nothing 3A Pro, and the iPhone 16e all live and hover around roughly around this price point. And it's super competitive. And one of the things with the Pixel 9a is that it has to do a lot to stand out. And design is one area where you need to stand out, and the Pixel 9a maybe or maybe doesn't do that. And let's talk design. We'll start at the front, and this is probably the biggest bugbear for most people when it comes to recent Pixels is the screen to body ratio, and the borders are still quite large. It's 83.5 inch screen to body ratio, which is way lower than what you're getting in some devices, which you can even hit up to 90% screen to body ratio. If you look at the rear, yeah, that's where the big change is, and that's the camera housing itself. In fact, there is no camera housing because this actually sits almost completely flush with the back of the phone. Now, there are some upsides to this. If you're laying flat and you're using a device, you're not going to get any wobble at all, which is awesome. And then the visor design, which is synonymous with a lot of Pixels in the recent years, has now gone, and you've got this flatter sort of pill-shaped design. And in this peony color, weird, pink, I guess is best to describe it, I'm just going to say slightly controversial that I absolutely love the design of the Pixel 9a for one main reason. It is super simple and super clean. Yes, the borders on the front do leave a little bit to be desired, but overall pocketability, holding it, feel, fit, finish, the fact that the back of these lenses is now recessed within the frame of the phone itself looks really good, and especially in this peony color, love the Pixel 9a design. That pill-shaped cutout houses dual lenses, 48 megapixel main, 38 megapixel ultra-wide, and is still the same dual lens setup on the Pixel 9a, and it does a lot to enhance its output, let's just say, using AI. So let's talk about those lenses themselves. As a whole, the photos and the videos, we'll start with photos on the 9a, are very good. You get super punchy colors, really good detail, tons of great results. If you shoot into the ultra wide photos, it does darken out and then uses a lot of AI processing to then brighten that image, which is fine. There's not much aggression when it comes to things like the portrait mode as well, which is really good. Night mode, bit of a mixed bag. You can get some really good, excellent shots with tons of detail, retains a lot of that night-esque background style photo, but then you get some which just shoot up the brightness and the colors a lot, which makes it look really weird. And then video, 4K 60, again, front and rear looks very good. And as a whole, the camera system on the Pixel 9a is excellent. But question for you guys, how does it compare to a phone that costs twice as much in the S25 Plus? So on the rear, you could probably already tell this is triple lenses on the Plus, dual lenses on the Pixel. To recap, 48 and 12 on the N9a, and then on the Plus, you get a 10 megapixel telephoto, 12 megapixel ultra wide with a 50 megapixel main lens. Generally speaking, with all the computation that's going on with photography and AI in the background, how it processes it, the S25 Plus does offer a better overall experience. However, I would preface this, there is certain modes within things like portrait mode, for example, where the 9a does perform better and isn't as aggressive. It does a better job of highlighting the subject and giving you more focus in the background as well as the foreground. So that is one of the wins. Imagery, in terms of video, you got 4K 60 on both at the moment in this, but you can top out in 8K on the S25 Plus. As a whole though, the Pixel 9a does perform very well against the S25 Plus, considering it's a phone that costs twice as much. But what are your thoughts on the camera comparisons between the Pixel 9a and the S25 Plus? The Tensor G4 that lives inside the Pixel 9a is by no means a powerhouse, and by all metrics, it's not meant to be. It's supposed to support the system, and that it's the software and the AI within these Pixel phones that do all of the grunt work. But the G4 does a really good job of just being a solid performer. In terms of performance as a whole, it's nowhere near some of the other mid-range phones that we've mentioned within this price category, like the Poco X7 Pro, the A56, 3A Pro, and the 16e. It doesn't compare that well. However, what it does do really, really well is the AI bit. So Gemini obviously fully integrated within the Pixel 9a as you'd expect. But in addition to that, you also get access to Pixel Studio. Now, this is one app I would say sounds really weird, but I would love to have this. So you can either use it in two ways. Use the pre-generated prompts that you've got and add in to sort of change them up the way you want to, or you can type to text and straight away that will generate an image for you as we've shown you here. And the results are pretty funky, but again, pretty accurate and pretty cool. It does a really good job of interpreting the text into what it does in terms of imagery. If you move out of that and you go into things like Magic Eraser, that again does a really good job. And what it'll do is as you go into the photo, it will just highlight the subject in entirety and there's a single tap to remove it. Super fast, super good. Weirdly, couple things. The Magic Eraser tools aren't already on device. You have to actually download them, which is a little bit weird, a little bit annoying. And then the Pixel Screenshots app that you've seen on the Pro, XL, Fold, etc. isn't available on the 9a. That's an exclusive to the flagships. Bit of a weird one, but I guess they wanted that bit of separation. But the grunt of the Pixel 9a is that Tensor G4. Now, when it comes to things like simple gaming, like Mario Kart, for example, performs very well. Call of Duty, again, represents the exact same way. However, one key thing, there is no performance or game boosting option within the Pixel 9a software to allow you to top out additional frames or add in additional frames like we were able to on something like the Poco F7 Ultra, where you can add in, using a chipset, extra frames to kind of boost the frame rate to get a better frame rate overall. However, gaming on this phone is very good. No issues, no slowdown, no graphical concerns, no lag, and again, really good thermal management with the Tensor G4. Lastly, on power, bit of a downside is charging. So the Pixel 9a has a 5,100 mAh battery, which is the largest in any Pixel ever. However, when wired, it will only charge at 23 watts. 23 watts, and wireless, 7.5 watts. Those are absolutely scandalous numbers compared to what you can get in the others we mentioned, deducting the 16e. Those will charge at 50 upwards watts. We are testing a phone that costs £180 here in the UK soon that charges at 45 watts. Bit of a weird one, a bit of a miss. That is a massive letdown. Hopefully this is the last gen that you get that 23 7.5, and we're looking at 45 and more on future Pixel A series devices. On the whole, the Pixel 9a is a bit of a mixed bag, so you can take it two ways. We'll give you both options. You could look at this as being a slightly older design with the borders, no real progression in terms of the cameras, and then again, the style of the phone as a whole is just blah, quite boring. However, on the other side, I would look at it this way. In terms of software and the Pixel OS that lives on this phone is excellent. Exclusive apps like Pixel Studio, for example, and the Gemini integration on here runs super fast. We've only shown you a tidbit of those AI features. On top of that, those dual cameras, although they may be the same as last year's, 48 and 12, they still perform incredibly well in almost any circumstance, almost all time, and it'll give you the most reliable output in this category, I feel, when it comes to performance on the cameras. As a whole, though, we haven't even mentioned the screen quality being great as well in terms of that OLED panel, how great it looks in terms of colors. Overall, though, on the $499 price point, roughly, as it stands right now for RRP, the Pixel 9a for me and for us would be an easy recommendation over something like the A56, which would be its almost direct rival, and especially over the iPhone 16e. Personally, a lot more capable, does a lot more, much more bang for your buck, and that camera performance, which you'll probably see in DxOMark's rankings very soon, are probably near the flagship level. And as you saw comparisons to the S25 Plus, not that far off. Let us know in the comment sections your thoughts on the Pixel 9a or what your favorite phone is in this mid-range category. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, we out.